my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
Good afternoon and welcome to Dublin City FM, and today I've got a very special guest for you, but before that we have a very special announcement, so over to you in the desk, Derek.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Yay! Happy
Yes, and I just wanted to let people know that not only is my guest today Alan Edge, or as we call him, A Edge as opposed to The Edge, it's also his birthday today. So Alan, welcome to Dublin City FM, and happy birthday as well.
Thank you so much, Mick. Yep. Thank you for having me, and thanks for that
21,
birthday surprise.
21 is it?
20, I wish. Yeah, I got two messages this morning actually saying, "So are you 40 now?" So I actually began to doubt myself and wonder.
Are you 40?
No, I've another year to go. Dodge that bullet for another year. So.
Well, if it's any consolation, I mean, I dream of being 40 again, and one of the reasons why I dream about being 40 again, excuse me, is because I genuinely found that life does begin at 40.
Well, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, some Absolutely. Of the best times I had in my life were between 40 and 45, and if I could do that again, it was just absolutely fabulous. So, Alan, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why, of course, is because you're a very, very prominent and respected member of the LGBT community, but you're also running for as an independent in the local elections. More to that, let's because you're an independent, you don't have the backing of a large organisation and a publicity machine and spin doctors and all of that. Just tell us a bit about Alan Edge. You began professional life anyway as a barrister, is that correct?
That's right. I was a criminal barrister in London. I was practising for 8 years, and then I moved back here toward the end of 2014.
Mm-hmm. Did you continue as a barrister? Or?
No, I didn't. It was time for a change, really. We sort of all found in the profession that things were contracting, various cuts and things like that. So really it was just a case that everyone made for the lifeboats. A lot of people went into kind of regulatory law, and I didn't really fancy that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you should say that, because I have another friend who is a city councillor on Dublin City Council, and she started, after she didn't get elected in one of the general elections, she took up, she went back to study, became a barrister, and we were talking about this, and it would seem that it's quite, how would I put it, it's plutocratic in the sense that if you're not really well connected, it's very, very difficult to make a living out of it. And she's now back as a solicitor, and very happy doing that. But was that your experience in Ireland anyway?
Well, actually, because I never practiced in Ireland and I never really contemplated. So oddly, you would expect it to be a little bit more plutocratic in Britain, but it's not. Yeah. It's actually a much broader kind of profession and easier to break into. So that wasn't the issue really. But obviously it would be now coming back at this stage, trying to get back into private practice. It would be a case probably of starting at the bottom, and I don't know whether I have the energy to climb that particular ladder again, Yeah. Yeah, no, you never thought of becoming a solicitor yourself, or was that? I've thought about it, but I sort of, really I kind of like new challenges, and I loved every minute of my time at the criminal bar, but I think it was time to move on and do something else. So what would you describe yourself as these days, Alan? You're running in the council, so obviously you could be classified as a politician to a certain degree, but I could and am by some anyway, certainly on Twitter. Yes, I sort of do a number of things. So in order to pay the bills, I'm a civil celebrant, so weddings and funerals and naming ceremonies and all that sort of thing. So that's my second career, if you like, and then obviously the campaign, which is taking up a lot of my time. I think you were at a wedding that I did.
No,
recently?
I wasn't at it, but I knew the two people who were there. As I say, when we talk about just how small a world it is, not only Dublin but also LGBT Dublin, I will give them a good plug. But I just saw the photographs of you doing that, and had you been doing them before that, or was
I had. I'd been doing them for a couple of years, but Aisling and Clodagh, I know they're friends of mine.
Yeah.
So I had said, I think a couple of years before they actually got married was when they got engaged, and I had said that I would do their wedding for them. So I was delighted to do it. It was a really special day. Because
they're a couple of fabulous people.
They're absolutely fabulous, and as you probably know, they proposed in the castle on the day of the result.
I didn't know that, but
did,
it was a very busy day. So
it was a very busy day indeed. So we brought that into the whole ceremony, and we sort of did a hand fasting with a rainbow flag, which they'd been holding when they were in all the photos and all the national press. So it was a lovely day.
Yeah, no, I first came across Clodagh when I was involved with TENI. Well, the gender recognition legislation campaigns were going through, and she was a very shy person down from Mayo at the time, and I think one of my claims to fame is I was the first person to ever interview Clodagh on Irish media. And that's why when I saw her, she's now the chair of Dublin Pride. Talk about blossoming. This is somebody who has seriously blossomed, and now she's confident, she's fabulous, and highly respected.
Absolutely, and doing an amazing job.
Whereas Aisling, I first met, there was another, it was just when I started with TENI, I think it was about September 2012, and there was what I call, it was a seminal event. It was a conference that was held in DCU, and there was a whole range of LGBT organisations from across Europe, and it was the announcement of essentially the start of the gender recognition legislation campaign. John Burton was there. Another colleague of yours was there, Katherine Zappone.
Yes, indeed.
Made one of the finest speeches I have ever made. And that's where I met Aisling and her sister.
Yes.
So many contacts came out of that one event. It was just remarkable, and that's why, for my generation, it is just fabulous to see the new generation coming through.
Absolutely.
We have passed the torch, and as I said, I'm very happy with the legacy we've left them, and I'm really happy with the foundation that they're going to build.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us, you were saying briefly that you were treasurer of the LGBT soccer. It was LGB just back in those days in TCD. What was it like being LGBT back in those days? Because everybody thinks, it's all fabulously liberal now, and it must have been just like that then. I suspect it probably wasn't.
It wasn't. And in fact, it was the LGB sock, as you say, and we added the T. We voted to add the T because up until that point, there hadn't been any trans members of the group, and then we had a trans girl.
When was that, about 2000?
That would have been 2000, I think. So I came out a couple of years before that, in '98, and it was different. It wasn't a pleasant experience really, I was very supported by my mother. My father had a very bad reaction. And it was tricky, and I think the society was really important. It was particularly important, I think, for people coming from rural Ireland as well, where there was absolutely no support network at that stage. It was an interesting time to be there. And actually when I moved back around the time of the marriage referendum, something really struck me as how different life is today for an LGBT person. To when I came out, and it was this lady called into the pop-up shop that we were running for Yes Equality, and she wanted a load of merch and badges and posters and everything. And I said, why? What's going on? She said, my son, I think he was about 15, has just come out. He's felt empowered enough to come out as a result of the referendum, and I'm throwing him a party.
Oh, excellent.
And I thought it was the most beautiful thing, and it really brought home the extent to which things have changed. I think even in my case, where I had, very supportive people around me, it was still a case of your coming out wasn't so bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't, certainly wasn't a cause for celebration.
Yep, yeah. Well, I'll share one with you, Alan, because I wasn't in Trinity, but I spent a lot of time hanging around Trinity because I came from the north side, and it was a long way out to Belfield, etc. And I think it was about 1973, and anybody who was anybody was a communist. That's the way it was. And and I remember we were in there one day, and it was May Day, and we thought, this is just really boring. This is really prescriptive. So we decided to rename it Gay Day, and we went round. Now everybody who knows me will tell you that whenever I meet strangers, I just call them petal. And the reason for the story behind that is that May Day 1973, which we had named Gay Day, and they were all going around calling each other comrade.
Yeah.
It's back again, but so we went around calling each other petal. And I tell you, the response was really interesting because people weren't quite used to that, in your face confidence. Because
brave.
back in those days, and this is again, you may or may not have heard it from your parents, whenever they talked about Trinity, because Catholics weren't allowed really go into Trinity, they usually rephrased it as Trinity queers.
Okay.
So, generally speaking, there was a good chance if you went to Trinity, because you weren't going to be Catholic, you were probably gay as well. Although we didn't have the word gay back then, we just had queers.
Which is being reclaimed
Which
now,
has
because it's the
absolutely
QSOC now, the LGBT SOC is now the QSOC in Trinity.
Well, as I say, it shows you how time has moved on. Absolutely. The other element I just wanted to raise with you, another mutual acquaintance, or I would go so far as to say a friend, but is Katherine Zappone. Now, I first came across Katherine probably about 10 years ago when she brought out the book with herself and Anne Louise. What a contribution to Irish society both of them have made.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was talking to her on Saturday, told her I was coming on the show, and she sent her love.
She's a fabulous woman.
She's
absolutely,
a wonderful person.
Yeah.
I'd only moved back when marriage equality happened, and I sort of led teams of canvassers in Dunleary, Rathdown, and then once the vote was won, I was kind of looking for something to do. All that sort of energy was there. And so I actually met Katherine and Anne Louise in Pantybar after the result, and I just kind of offered my services. I said, look, is there anything I can do? And she said at that stage she was preparing to run for the Dáil. And so long before I moved to her constituency, I became involved with her, knocking on doors, and had the incredible privilege as well of canvassing with Anne Louise, who, although she never complained, wasn't well at the time, and to see her going out in all weathers and really inspiring all these young people who were out knocking on doors for Katherine. So it was a wonderful time, and I've been supporter of hers ever since, and she's been a supporter of mine. So
it's interesting. Katherine has mainly got the headline. She's mainly been the media personality, but I think it was the last parade or march that they had for marriage equality. It was organised by LGBT Noise. Both of them came on stage, and Anne Louise was the one who did address the crowd. And I hadn't really heard her much before then, but what a remarkable woman, and that's all I could say. I mean, I'd interviewed Katherine several times before that, but I've still got the speech, and it was just so good. You'd think, oh yes, this was a formidable partnership.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And in fact, I was at a talk the other day that Lynn Ruane was speaking at about working class women in politics and how to get more working class women into politics. And she mentioned that Anne Louise had given her a book of philosophy, and underlined was beneath the silence is a roar, and she was just talking about how inspiring she'd found that, and it was lovely to, she really is still inspiring a new generation of women, I think, and so it's a wonderful legacy.
Yeah. No, it's as I say, the debt that not only the LGBT community owes to two remarkable women, but Ireland itself, I think, and you can never speak it up too much. Now, the other element as well, Alan, you're a celebrant, and what that I interpret what that means is that you could be a marriage celebrant. You can also be a a funeral celebrant as well,
Yes.
and a naming as well. Now, unfortunately, because it's a bit in-house, you can't do bar mitzvahs, but that's
Well, you know,
who
there's
knows? That may be something for the future.
you never know, and in fact, there's a very well established, as I'm sure you know, tradition of humanism within Judaism, certainly since the
Absolutely.
'60s. So I don't, you know, it's only a matter of time, I would imagine.
Yeah. You're also involved with the humanists, aren't you?
I am
with
indeed,
our
yes.
friends that from time to time I get to meet down there on the outside the GPO, arguing with the with those who are going to save our souls.
Yes, no, it's often Atheist Ireland who are outside
Exactly,
the GPO,
yes, yeah.
but yes, and I've worked alongside them on issues as well. But yeah, the humanists meet once a month and kind of discuss a range of issues. We recently had Yevgeny Storn, who I'm sure you know,
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
an advocate in direct provision. And
He's
he
an
did
excellent,
excellent,
really good,
yeah,
isn't he? Really,
such a
really,
good speaker
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and very persuasive. So yeah, the humanists are great, and I think they perform a really important role in just providing that space for people who are looking for a good life without God, shall we say?
Sure, yeah. I mean, well, what I like to say is a secular life based on the rule of law, which is,
Absolutely.
most of us couldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
You grew up in Shankill, but you're now living in the mountains, I gather.
I am, yeah. I couldn't get much more of a change from North London anyway. I'm in Glenasmole, the Glenasmole Valley, which is extremely beautiful spot, and I've been there 3 years. Still kind of getting to know everyone. It takes a little while when you're a blow-in, but yeah, it's really a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. How far is it? When I was in the Scouts, Bohernabreena is where we used to get off the bus, and then they had an old converted school somewhere up there, which so my memories of Bohernabreena, which I suspect has changed dramatically since then. That's
not.
That's pardon.
Probably not.
Yeah. Well, as I say. Would that put you in the bit of what I would call have green credentials, or are you just a man who likes the isolation and be surrounded by nature?
Well, I do like to be surrounded by nature. As I say, I hadn't planned it really. I moved back and was looking around for somewhere, and I sort of stumbled across Glenasmole by accident and fell in love with it. I suppose in terms of green credentials, yeah, I mean, you know, you can't live in an area like that and see, for example, a skipload of rubbish which has been dumped there as it is all the time, and not just be really profoundly upset and annoyed by it. So I think certainly it has probably spurred me on to be much greener, and obviously I'm adopting a lot of green policies in this campaign as well.
You've decided to run for South Dublin Council in the Firhouse-Bohernabreena ward. You potentially could have run for in the Shankill ward on Dunleary. Was one more compelling than the other?
It never really occurred to me, I have to say. I do like the idea of running in the area in which you live. I think that's quite important, particularly because it's about having a connection with the people that you're going to be representing. So it never occurred to me. And also I've got to know the area very well through canvassing for Katherine, and also involvement with Repeal the Eighth and so on. So I do have a number of links with canvassers and a number of volunteers, fortunately, who canvass with me. So yeah, I've really sort of put down roots, I think, in Dublin Southwest and in Firhouse-Bohernabreena.
Sure. I suspect what you're going to be is a resident or a community candidate first with an LGBT dimension. How important do you think, though, it is for people who are LGBT to get involved in politics?
I think it's hugely important, and I think particularly because I suppose it's tempting to look at local politics sometimes and think, well, it's perhaps not quite as sexy as national politics.
Not sexy
are,
at all at times,
it's,
yeah.
it's really
by
not.
nature of the, as we say, by nature of the brief.
Exactly. But I think actually, when you look at it, you look, for example, at marriage equality and Repeal the Eighth and all that sort of thing, and they were ground up movements, and they really did happen at a local level.
Sure.
So when I moved back and I was kind of offering my services, and people were saying, well, why don't you come to Glen and you can speak to businesses and do all that sort of thing. And I said, I don't really know how to speak to businesses. I used to go to work in 17th century fancy dress. I don't do corporate speak. I'd much rather go knock on a few doors and talk to people. And so really I think there is a lovely extension of that sort of ground up social justice movement into local politics now. Social justice issues are not probably the first issues that come to mind when you're talking to people. They're much more concerned with things like infrastructure and planning policy and all that sort of thing. But I think nonetheless it is about making that connection with people. And hopefully I think there's a move to make our local politics more engaging and more interactive. Certainly I think it's an issue for South Dublin County Council. They don't seem to be engaging people, and they don't seem to be communicating terribly well with people.
Well, it's an interesting one. You should mention that now, because when I was looking about 2 months ago, I was going through and I particularly looked at two councils, which was South Dublin and Dublin City Council, both of which I would know best. Dublin City Council, I worked out, based on people who are out, that there were 5% of the councillors were LGBT. 2 of them are not running again this year, so that really reduces it. Now, I haven't heard of any others that may be running as well. And then I had a look at South Dublin, and I think it was 2 out of 40 there as well. So it's the LGBT community is underrepresented,
yes.
And it would be very unfortunate if the numbers were to drop in that regard.
It would, and who knows what's going to happen in this particular, because obviously in Firhouse-Bohernabreena
you've got it's probably, dare I say it, the gayest community or gayest ward in the whole electorate.
Yes.
You've got 2 people running there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Emma Murphy, I've got to know recently. She's very able indeed. Let's hope, because obviously Fianna Fáil are now running 2 candidates.
Yeah.
I would hate to get a seat at the expense of another LGBT candidate, just
Absolutely.
coming from an LGBT point of view.
Yeah. So as you go round, what are you finding are the issues on the doorstep? I mean, if I could toss a couple with you, and they may not be coming up at all, but when I look at South Dublin Council, there are 3 that immediately come to mind with me. The first one would be directly elected Lord Mayors. Is that coming up, and what would your position be on that one?
It's not. It's not coming up at all.
Okay,
to be
that's
honest, and
interesting,
it's really, I think it's an issue in the media, but it doesn't seem to be reflected on the doorsteps.
Okay, yeah. Another one that, again, and I suppose because I am the media in that sense of the word, and I have a lot of time for some of the good things that South Dublin do, but I think in one area, South Dublin, I would suggest, are the ones that have the most scope for improvement, and that is transparency, because South Dublin is the only council of the 4 that doesn't do webcasting.
Yes.
And I've been very critical of that, because if the other 3 can do it, there's absolutely no reason why South Dublin had a vote about 6 months ago, and they voted it down. Had you been on the council, how would you have responded to that vote?
I absolutely would have been in favour. I think it's so important to have transparency. I think people lose sight of the fact that councillors are there to represent the people in their ward. It's a very simple proposition.
Sure, yeah.
And this is an issue that's coming up on the door now, not in terms of the live link issue, but in terms of being kept in the dark, and also a sense, whether justified or not, I think justified, that the council are just imposing things upon people without proper consultation. And there is this kind of awful mother knows best approach. And so you're seeing that in a whole range of areas. And, one off the top of my head is the issue about the Knocklion Football Club pitches, which they were proposing to build on. And residents are saying, well, look, we've been using this, the club has been using these playing fields for years and years and years. And the problem is that the council is then able to present a narrative, well, look, this is NIMBYism and these people are against social housing, which isn't the true position at all. The people I'm speaking to are saying, no, we're not against social housing, but we don't believe it should be at the expense of kids' amenities, which are badly needed. Yeah,
the other element I find, because I get the minutes of the South Dublin meeting, and I find it's a bit patronising in the sense that you get a motion come up and then it says there was a discussion and then they voted, and so you've no idea who said what or what the issues were. You get the motion and you get the vote, and I think that's an area very much that they could improve on. Is that something you would hope that they would listen to you on?
Absolutely. I think it's really, really crucial. I think it's very important for people to see what it is that their local representatives are for, because this is a problem, that there is a cynicism, and you can see it reflected in the turnout. What are local representatives for? And I think what they are for is to fight and to advocate for the people that they represent, and it's crucially important that they're able to see that and understand that and engage with that.
Yeah. Another issue that has come to prominence to me that's happening out there, and I was a bit surprised that the Green Party, from the conversations I've had with some of their reps, they didn't see it as much of a major issue, and in fact perhaps opposed to were supporting it, which was the Massey Woods.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that one, Alan?
Well, so I was involved really just in presenting some submissions at the open hearing with On Board Planola. Now, the issue I was presenting on was archaeology. Obviously, they've been asked to come back to provide further information about biodiversity. But I think the big problem seems to me to have been that the assessments that were carried out were not proper assessments. They don't seem to have done things. They seem to have done things quickly and cheaply and without going into it in proper detail. And again, this is another example, I think, of the council trying to impose this upon people. And you have concerned local residents who the council would portray as NIMBYs, who are actually saying, no, look, we have very sensible proposals for what could be done to improve Massey's Woods and the Hellfire Club, but building this enormous I refer to it as an interpretive restaurant. This big, huge vanity project, which it seems to be in some regards, is not necessary. It's going to involve a huge amount of money. It's going to be done in circumstances where the proper assessments about impact on biodiversity haven't been done.
Yeah, well, I go to a cemetery up there on a regular basis, and the traffic is horrendous on that hill. Unfortunately, Alan, we have run out of time. We wish you the very best in the May elections, and we will look forward to seeing you perhaps back here as councillor, Alan Age. So, Alan, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, Mick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it for today. We want to hand you back to Derek on the desk for doing such a fabulous job, and don't go anywhere, because coming up after this will be Brazilian Coffee with all things Brazilian.
My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am.